The city started to incorporate in Texas after the state was initiated as the 28th state in the nation. These communities developed in the area currently known as the Texas Triangle. Houston, Galveston, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin and San Antonio. That area makes up the Texas Triangle. The first incorporated city in Texas was Nacogdoches, Texas. Communities and counties developed in Texas prior to 1845. People moved to Texas to socialize and for economic purposes. The social gatherings were opportunities for people to establish their culture. An example of a social gathering was the population of German immigrants in the Central Texas region. Immigrants from other regions in Europe also gathered and populated, but they populated in the Southeast region. Prior to 1845, people established their culture in counties. For example, a group of individuals from Tennessee moved to East Texas. The land they established was once known as Nashville County. The name was changed to Shelbyville. Shelbyville County still exists in East Texas, and the county seat is Center, Texas. People also moved to Texas during the Reconstruction. Groups of individuals moved to Central Texas and East Texas, and the primary reason was agriculture. Cotton and lumber were commodities people could access and profit from, and the resources were more predominant in East Texas. Another factor of economic and social development in the Texas Triangle was fair trade. People with cattle in the Central Texas region traded their cattle. For example, the Bivens family accepted cattle in return for land that they owned in Central Texas. The Bivens family transported the cattle to West Texas, and the land that was traded was in the Central Texas Austin. So agriculture in the terms of cattle, cotton, and lumber were significant as Texas started to develop. Prior to 1845 and after the state's introduction into the nation. Another beneficial service was transport. People transported goods to the Galveston shipyard and Houston shipyard. The Galveston shipyard predated the Houston shipyard. However, both ports were integral because people could receive large quantities of resources on the waterway. So people could receive their basic needs in Southeast Texas and in other regions. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, people primarily received their basic needs. For example, towns and communities could provide schools, post offices, posts, and campsites. The post was a service that provided goods to the public. People also waited at campsites for trains. Trains were significant to the expansion and development of Texas. Cities in the Texas Triangle developed between 1845 and 1860. Regions in South Texas also developed, but they developed between 1850 to 1900. Communities in West Texas primarily developed to complement railroad services. For example, many cities in West Texas developed primarily to serve as posts and campsites for railroad companies. West Texas is a comprehensive area comprised of three regions: the Texas Panhandle, Far West, and the Pecos. The Pecos region is the area near Pecos, Texas. Pecos, Texas was established to be a campsite for people to ride to and wait before they could catch their next train. The Texas and Pacific Railroad carried passengers to Pecos. Passengers could wait at the campsite to transfer to the Southern Pacific Railroad. The Southern Pacific Railroad would take passengers to regions in the west, such as San Diego. Lubbock, Texas, Amarillo, Texas, Sweetwater, Texas, and other regions were also established after the cities in the Texas Triangle developed. So cities in West Texas primarily developed between 1880 and 1890. Communities in the Pecos and Far West developed between 1860 and 1880. Most cities and most populations started to develop in the Texas Triangle, as stated, between 1845 and 1860. And it stated the growth was primarily due to people being able to receive their basic needs. Railroad companies provided services throughout Texas. The name of the railroad company implicated the territory served by the company. For example, the Texas and Pacific Railroad Company was initially designed to provide services for people to travel from Texas to the Pacific region of the United States. However, the services only included territories in Texas. The Texas and Pacific Railroad eventually merged with the Missouri Pacific Railroad, and the Missouri Pacific Railroad eventually merged with the Southern Pacific Railroad. As the state developed, people could take the Texas and Pacific Railroad to Pecos and other regions to catch a different train. Another company was the Houston, East, and West Texas Railroad. The company initially planned to service areas between Houston and Texarkana and envisioned services in East Texas and West Texas. However, the services were only provided between Houston and Lufkin. Lufkin eventually became the depot for the Houston East and West Texas train system, and the service was later merged into the New Orleans and Pacific Railroad. Garland, Dallas, and Fort Worth emerged due to the train services provided in the regions. I want to focus on Dallas for the remainder of the video because Dallas emerged more than Garland and Fort Worth, and this is arguably primarily due to the railroad industry. Garland is a large section of land and was merged into one city after two rival communities agreed to become one city, which is Garland, Texas. Citizens in Garland could receive their basic needs. Garland had a school, a post office, and was the home of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. The AT&SF Railroad covered regions near Garland and was a fast and reliable means of transport for citizens in the region. Fort Worth is also a large region and was home to the Fort Worth and Denver City Railroad. The Fort Worth and Denver City Railroad serviced regions west of Fort Worth. Due to the companies being separate, people could transport from the Fort Worth and Denver City Railroad to the AT&SF Railroad to reach a specific destination. In Dallas, people could catch the Houston and Texas Central Railroad. The Houston and Texas Central Railroad serviced regions between Houston, Central Texas, and Dallas. What made the Houston and Texas Central Railroad stand out was the services provided to the public. The territory served by the Houston and Texas Central Railroad was relatively larger than the territory served by the AT&SF and the Fort Worth and Denver City Railroad Company. In other words, the track territory served by the Houston and Texas Central Railroad was more extensive than the area that comprised the AT&SF and Fort Worth and Denver City Railroad. Additionally, people utilized the Houston and Texas Central Railroad more than the AT&SF and the Fort Worth and Denver City Railroad. Due to consumer demand, the Houston and Texas Central Railroad was an essential service. The emphasis placed on services benefited the Houston and Texas Central Railroad economically and was a catalyst of Dallas economic growth. Whereas the services in Garland and Fort Worth were essential and important, the companies were not direct competitive rivals to the Houston and Texas Central Railroad. The AT&SF Railroad merged with other companies and would eventually become known as the company Santa Fe Railroad. The Fort Worth and Denver City Railroad eventually merged with the Burlington Northern Railroad. The Burlington Northern Railroad originated in New York City. However, it was headquartered in Fort Worth and later headquartered in Dallas, Texas. In the mid-1990s, the Santa Fe Railroad and Burlington Northern Railroad merged to become the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. The two independent companies were prominent in the railroad industry and were more prominent after the merger. Due to the economic value of Dallas, Texas, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad was headquartered in Dallas. The Houston and Texas Central Railroad eventually merged with the Southern Pacific Railroad. The Southern Pacific Railroad, Western Pacific Railroad, and Missouri Pacific Railroad all merged together to form the company known as the Union Pacific Railroad. The Union Pacific Railroad was one of the first railroad companies in the United States. The Union Pacific Railroad is also headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Therefore, two prominent railroad companies in the United States, the Union Pacific Railroad, along with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, are headquartered in Dallas, Texas. The events catalyzed by the Houston and Texas Central Railroad were factors of Dallas being more of a prominent city than Garland and Fort Worth in context of population and economic growth. And is also a reason why Dallas developed into a metropolitan area.